And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast on day 6 of what has been a strange and harrowing NBA playoffs, and to bounce around some of the series, not all of them, because 3 of them are playing starting in a few hours and a couple of them are boring, is the great Dan Devine of The Ringer, where a lot of my old friends work. How you doing, Dan?
Doing well, Zach. How are you doing?
Good. Surviving the playoffs. First round, my policy is pro sweep. Let's sweep everybody. Not ESPN's policy, but my policy. So the Warriors blowing a 31-point lead was painful on a personal pro sweep level because I expect those teams to sweep. And when they don't, it's an even more dramatic story that increases our workload. But that was fun. And I woke up today, a little personal note, because I know the listeners love personal notes. I woke up today to watch the third and fourth quarters of Houston's continued obliteration of the Jazz. And my daughter crept out of her bedroom, looked at the TV, and said, "The beard is cooking. Get out of the hot heat because the beard is cooking," which is close to a page in a children's book called B is for Baller, which has something about if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen because the beard is cooking, Daddy. And she pointed at the beard. It was very exciting for me.
That is fantastic. So you're raising her right.
Yeah.
Mine last night when she came back from a daycare thing goes, "Okay, Daddy, which one is Kevin Love?" I said,
"Whoa,
Kevin Love. Got some bad news for you about the Cavs this season."
Yeah, it didn't go well for them. Well, my daughter has stopped asking about LeBron mostly, so she's got the message.
She's evolving. Right.
The beard is now her favorite, is her new favorite. I want to talk about 3 series today that are interesting to me because of sort of we are reaching sort of prove it moments for a lot of key players. So we're not going to talk about Milwaukee Detroit because that's not a good series. And then the 3 games tonight we're not going to talk about. That's Brooklyn Sixers, testy series, Brooklyn Sixers.
A lot of fun.
I'm enjoying the testiness.
Right.
I enjoyed Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, Dwayne Wade, LeBron mocking Dirk Nowitzki having a cold moment at the expense of poor Jared Allen.
A few rounds early for that, but don't worry. Jared Dudley's going to pick that one back up. He's going to,
Jared Dudley does not mess around. And we got Nuggets Spurs, which I feel like there are 86 combined people outside of San Antonio and Denver that are watching that series. I'm one of them.
It's good.
It's a good series.
It's entertaining.
It was a good series. But that was a very improbable comeback the other night. You wrote very, very movingly about Jamal Murray and the power of faith.
I'd like to just quickly. I owe an apology to Coach Michael Malone, to the Denver Nuggets faithful, to Jamal Murray's family, and those who care deeply about him, for suggesting that maybe as a guy who was getting wrecked through 7 quarters of a series, you might want to lean away from him a little bit. Jamal Murray made me look very foolish for that take.
That's what he does, though. That is the Jamal Murray experience. That's it. You know, you're riding the roller coaster with him, and then we have Warriors Clippers round 3 tonight, which will be very interesting. But I want to start with this. To me, I am most looking forward to Game 3 of Oklahoma City and Portland because for many reasons. I really like this Blazers team. I think Dame has had some of the moment of the playoffs. I think so far was Dame stonewalling Russ in the post, clapping about it, and then coming down and hitting a 30-foot dagger within 10 seconds of that. That was the moment of the playoffs. I also think that game included what was perhaps the single worst sequence of Russell Westbrook's career. It occurred with about 4 minutes and 40 seconds left in Game 2, here in the second quarter of Game 2. Westbrook Adams pick and roll. Westbrook 12-foot jump shot, air ball from 12 feet. It's an air ball. Like, you might have been able to get rim on that. And just sort of in the days of having accomplished that, he just sort of meandered back on defense, and he wasn't complaining to the referee. He wasn't like struck by anything, like any body or object. He just sort of meandered, and Damian Lillard, not in a full sprint, not in a transition opportunity, just ran right by him, jogged right by him, caught the ball before Russ understood what was happening, went around a pick from, I believe, Al-Farouq Aminu, and just shot a 3. And Russ was out of the play. And because Russ was out of the play, Al-Farouq Amino's man, Jeremy Grant, was like, oh, shit, I got to do something, and jumped at Damian Lillard and fouled him. And it was a 4-point play. And so that was, to me, the single worst 12 seconds of Russell Westbrook's NBA career, excluding the 9,000 turnovers he had as a rookie. And I think this is interesting because they're down 0-2. Since Kevin Durant left, Russ has a 5-game loss, a 6-game loss, and now an 0-2 in the playoffs. I am not a hot take guy, but he's got to start winning on the playoffs if he wants to have the stature historically that his stats suggest that he should have, his all-star appearances and all that suggests that he should have. And they're getting rolled right now. And Paul George spent the entire season being a supernova. And I think what we've seen in the playoffs is that papered over a lot of structural inadequacies with the Thunder. It papered over a really terrible jump shooting season from Russ. And Paul George is not a supernova right now. He's injured. He's hampered. And this has been eye-opening. And I'm curious sort of what are you looking for as they try to recover this series? Because I think this is a big moment for Russ. I think they got to show something in these 2 games.
And I think it sort of sets up 2 separate paths that he can take, right? There's like the maximalist Westbrook impulse, which is presented with the need to do something, you then crank everything up, not to 11, but to like 17. And it's just, I'm going to take 50 shots and I'm going to drive 110 miles an hour through everybody. And I'm going to try to leave a 4-foot hole in the middle of Enes Kanter as I drive through them and yada, yada, yada. And what the most successful the Thunder were during the season was when Russ paired back and made space and focused more on being like an elite level everything else guy or a higher level everything else guy, facilitator, on-ball defender, help defender, havoc wreaker, whatever, to create space for Paul George to be that offensive force that he was. But so there's the 2 paths that we've seen him take, and one was more team successful this season than the other. But if Paul George can't do that, then Westbrook sort of has to crank things up in the other way. And if he's not hitting shots at a level commensurate with taking 50 of them, and we've seen nothing this season to indicate that, or in the last couple seasons really, to indicate that he should or would be able to do that, it leaves Oklahoma City, as you said, there's that structural deficiency of if the made shots, the bulk of them, and the bulk of the creation isn't coming from those guys, where's it coming from? Is it Dennis Schroeder? Are you relying? You desperately need more from Jeremy Grant and Terrence Ferguson, but those aren't the guys that you're going to be able to rely on in these sort of situations. So yeah, this is like, it's setting up for a, superhero moment for Russ, but that often sort of plays into his worst tendencies as a player too, which is a tough spot to be in when you just need to get a game to get on the board.
Sam Presti is a really smart general manager. There's no debate about that. He has two sort of black marks against him, and one is the Harden trade, which we don't need to get into.
My boss has that sort of as a...
Bill, that's Bill's corner. Right. Bill's living on Harden, the intersection of Harden, Trade Boulevard, and whatever the other street would be. I'm too tired to think of a joke. And this isn't really fair, but they just have never been able to find shooting. Ever.
Yeah, he's got a type.
And part of that is it's hard to find shooters who can play defense well enough to survive on the wing in the playoffs, because the wing is where a lot of your best offensive players are going to be. And it's not as if Sam Presti is unaware that he needs more shooting. We don't really know what happens with Alex Abrinas this year. Mm-hmm. Patrick Patterson was supposed to be the spacing and shooting 4, has completely fallen. Doesn't even play. Right. Not playing. And you do look back at Robertson is not a shooter, but he's at least another player. He's at least not Raymond Felton. Right. There's like an alarming amount of Raymond Felton going on. Like if you're trying to win playoff games and Raymond Felton is a critical part of your rotation in 2019, like that's evidence of some structural problems. But you go back through the Josh Hustises, the Dion Waiters trade that didn't work out, the using a draft pick on Mitch McGary. They just haven't been able to find the guy. And again, like, it's hard to build a team when you have a super max guy, not just a max guy, a super max guy, a second max guy, and Steven Adams making almost the max. You just don't have, and they're already $1 gazillion over the tax. They've turned all their bad contracts into Dennis Schroeder, which is fine. That's good. They just don't have a ton of resources left, but the fact remains they just haven't been able to find that. And as Russ's jump shot has fallen apart, like, it's just hard to go to Paul George, because when you watch Paul George run pick and roll, as they have done a lot in this series, and the Blazers will blitz it because Paul George can shoot off the dribble, and then you see, well, they're okay putting 2 on Paul George because they're literally not guarding anybody else on the entire floor. There's nowhere he can go.
Yeah, it's really been tough to, because that's one of the things that really advanced with Paul George's game to a greater degree this season, is seeing his ability to pick out those passes, make those reads. His scoring was through the roof also, but there was that, career high in assists. The assist percentage was up. The decision making was great. And now, you're looking at what's the best of a lot of bad options around the perimeter. And it's sort of like, across the board in Oklahoma City right now, for the first 2 games of this series at least, it's just, a little bit of degradation along the way. Steven Adams isn't what he is when he's the most healthy, maybe because he's just playing through everything and he's not quite as quick, not quite as decisive.
He's doing his job. His post-ups have been all right against Kanter, and his defense has been, they're asking him to do a lot. Mm-hmm. They're asking him to contain these Lillard pick and rolls 32 feet from the hoop, and he's doing it. Okay, he's doing it well enough.
But that's the thing. So, you looked at the beginning of this series and you said, well, there's a sketch here, there's an outline, a thumbnail of the Thunder can do what the Pelicans did last season. You have Russ is a heck of an athlete and long and angry and nasty when he plays defense, sometimes to his detriment. Adams is able to move away from the rim too. Grant has length. They have length at the other perimeter positions. Maybe there's a way that they put 2 on the ball, they shrink the passing lanes down, and they're able to sort of reuse that game plan. They just have, it's not a black mark on the Thunder to say, well, they're not quite as good defensively as Drew Holiday and Anthony Davis at their peaks, but they haven't been able to replicate that as successfully. McCollum and Dame are getting around the corner on those, and they're making good things happen.
CJ is cooking
sensational
in this series,
which I was skeptical of because he missed the week with a little more than a week maybe with the knee strain, and has had his ups and downs this season as well. But when they have both of those guys able to manipulate the way you want to defend them and still get to where they want to go and create clean looks for guys like for Aminu, for Mo Harkless, for Seth Curry, everything else sort of pops and fizzes, and it makes that offense so much more difficult to guard. And there's just not enough of anything anywhere else. If Paul George isn't a superhero, they're in trouble. If Adams can't defend everything, they're in trouble. If you're getting 2 for 15 Terrence Ferguson instead of 4 for 15 Terrence Ferguson, ideally you'd get more than 4 for 15, but you take what you can get.
I haven't looked at what are Ferguson's numbers in this series. I haven't looked them up. I know Jeremy Grant is 3 of 15 and 0 of 8 from 3.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now. But
Russ is 13 of 37 and 1 of 10 on threes.
Yeah, the lack of shooting was an issue, the first week of the season. It was an issue for Russ in the middle of the season. It's an issue, there were ups and downs where guys had some hot streaks, but it's been a fundamental issue with the way the team is constructed all year. And, you bring up a good point about the way the team is built, and, you're paying all that money to Russ, you're paying all that money to Paul George, you're paying all that money to Steven Adams. They're worth the money. People can argue about the supermax for Russ, but in general, as like a foundational, cornerstone piece.
If you want to keep basketball relevant at Oklahoma City for the next 5 years, the guy is the MVP.
Absolutely.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, you had to offer that contract at that point.
And by the way, one of the reasons that this has been a disappointing season and series, a disappointing last 30 games of the season, and so far a disappointing series. And as Pat Riley said, series doesn't start until the road team wins. So let's see what they do in Oklahoma City. I bet they get at least one. They better get at least one, obviously. But one of the reasons this has been a disappointment to me is that if you froze this season 55 games in, you would say, look at what Sam Presti accomplished. Okay, Kevin Durant left. Maybe the best player in the NBA left. Re-signed Russ at a price that, if you gave Sam Presti truth serum, not thrilled. I bet you he's not thrilled. Nobody could be. If this is the beginning of a decline in his career, that's going to be a bad contract. But you got to pay it. Mm-hmm. Flipped the same stuff that Orlando traded for Serge Ibaka into Paul George, and has Adams at a fair price and dotted the supporting guy. You would have looked 50 games in and said, hey, if Durant leaves again, why aren't they set up to be one of the 3 or 4 teams that can make the finals in the West? Now, the Warriors, I think, would still be the favorites, but we'll see. And now it's like, let's see if they can get a split against the Blazers. And PG doesn't look right. That's been well documented. Mo Harkless and Pat Connaughton are having like random dudes blocking shots. Pat Connaughton turned into Mitchell Robinson last night in the Bucks-Pistons game that nobody watched. You saw this a couple times that Paul George tried to split those traps on the pick and roll, just lost the ball. His handle's not there.
He's got like the KT tape that winds up looking like venom on his shoulder. Like it's just like there's like black all over the place.
And Russ just has these games. Like game 2 was one of them where it's like these layups are not even really contested layups. Like there's not even a shot blocker there, and they just go off the backboard and don't hit the rim. And you're like, what's going on? And those two guys just have to play at an A level for this team to win. And they're just not getting there. And I'm particularly interested in Russ because, they run that Russ Steven Adams pick and roll. That's the pick and roll they have to run because, as I said, when they run the PG pick and roll, there is no space for him to do anything. Mm-hmm. And Portland is just sitting back. They're dropping Canner back, letting Russ dribble right at him, trying their best to keep the 3 other defenders out of the play, and saying, we are going to live with a 12-foot jumper by you or an 8-foot floater by Steven Adams. We're not thrilled about the 8-foot floater, but we'll live with that. We're betting that you just can't go right up through Enes Kanter, that you can't rev up and go right through him and get to the rim or get to the line or keep going and get Adams for a lob dunk. We're betting you can't do that. And when he started to do that at the end of game 1, in the fourth quarter, the last with about 4 minutes to go, he had 3 or 4 possessions in a row where, okay, here he comes. They started to scrunch in off the other guys, and you thought, well, okay, they can do that. None of those guys except PG can shoot. But they're going to have to get more profitable stuff than a Steven Adams 9-foot floater out of that, and I just want to see him do it.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the numbers before. Non-Paul George members of the Thunder have made 4 3-pointers in 2 games, which is not going to work. And
how many has Myers Leonard made? At least one.
I mean, and that one counts for about 50, right?
He did the Hulk flex afterwards, too.
He is a perfect 1-for-1 from 3-point range in this series. But yeah, I think it's just for that. It's funny to look at it because there was that outline of this is a bad matchup for Portland, the season series, and all these sorts of things. But those games, a lot of that was contested with Paul George at an MVP level and Adams without maybe a full season of wear and tear and Russ winning that individual matchup. And if those things don't stack up in their favor, all of a sudden the Thunder look like an incredibly flawed team playing a really good team that has better depth and a better system and a better opportunity.
This is going to be, if Portland goes on to win this series, this is going to be my most regretted public ESPN pick of all time.
You were feeling it? You were
when we had to send these picks in, first of all, some people opt not to do it. I reluctantly do it. I sent 7 in. And I said I'm going to take this last one to the wire because my heart and my gut were saying Portland.
I'm sure your editors loved.
And they did not. And I could not get by the regular. I just got intimidated by the regular season beatdowns, which weren't even beatdowns actually. If you went back and looked at them, they were mostly close games. And went Thunder in 6. And my gut and I just felt. I also just on a visceral level, I can't trust Kanter. I just thought Kanter would get exposed a little bit more. That the gap between Nurkic and Kanter on both ends of the floor would get exposed as big as it is, and that just hasn't happened yet. And by the way, my favorite trip that I've made in the NBA in the last couple of years has been the week I spent in Portland earlier this year. And the reason I went there was I want to see how does this team recover from what happened to them last year in the playoffs. After losing to the Warriors in the first round and the Warriors the year before. And because that just felt from the outside like that's it for this group.
Right.
Like even if they all survive coming into this year, there's going to be trust shaken, confidence shaken, fingers pointing. And I had a sense that they were different just from talking to the coaches and the people I knew there. I had a sense that I was warned it's not going to be like that here. And I wanted to go and see why it was not going to be like that there, and there's lots of reasons for that. Terry Stotts is one, CJ McCollum is one, Neil O'Shea is one, but the biggest one is Damian Lillard. And it's crazy to suggest that a guy who hit a series-winning shot, how many years ago now? 5 years ago?
Yeah, 2014.
Needs to have another moment. An all-NBA player needs to have another moment, but I guess because he plays in Portland, he needs to have another moment. This has been his moment so far, and he is playing. It's not even the big stuff. It's the, like you talked about, the traps that New Orleans just destroyed him with. He went back into the lab this summer and worked on that.
Right.
How do I get better at that? What are some techniques I need to do to make sure that never happens again? It's just a little thing. Like, you watch this, there's like about 8 minutes and 30 seconds left in the first quarter of game 1. Side pick and roll on the right side of the floor. Oklahoma City sets up for it's not quite a trap, but it's like up to the level of the screen. Mm-hmm. Dame doesn't even get to the screen. He squeezes in between his guy and the screener and just goes right to the rim and lays the ball in it like a dipsy do over Jeremy Grant left-handed. You're like, that's just smart, man. Why let him trap you? Just like scrunch in there. He's having a moment. It's great to see.
Yeah, before the playoffs, sort of in lieu of a preview, I wound up writing about sort of my 5 most interesting players of the postseason, guys who I was really wondering how this was all going to shake out for them and, what their paths through the postseason were going to look like. He was one of those guys for me because, as you said, there's sort of a mounting consensus, like, this is one of the 2 or 3 best point guards in the NBA at this point, but he continues to go out early. He hasn't had a moment in 5 years like that. And at some point, if you are going to be the guy who, gets elevated in those conversations above peers who might not be significantly better players, but who have better resumes, you've got to push your team beyond the expectation point, beyond they're favored in one series, they're not favored in another series, and you bow out. You have to be pushing them beyond the point of where everyone expects. And through 2 games, this is what you're seeing. You're seeing in a series with a guy who's averaged a triple-double for 3 straight years and is a former MVP, and a guy who is a legit MVP candidate this season. Lillard's been the best player on the floor for 2 straight games, and if that doesn't change in a meaningful way starting Game 3, I think that Oklahoma City's in a lot of trouble.
Anything else you're watching as Oklahoma City tries to recover this? Any adjustments, any matchups, anything you're looking at?
Well, I think, significantly, those sort of the other guys, your Seth Currys, your Aminus, your, Kanter obviously is the big one to me. Those guys played to their station or above their stations in Portland. Kanter, I think, being his ability to hold up, against those, against the pick and rolls and hold up against Adams in the post. If Portland's able to get away with that, and not have, Oklahoma City play him off the floor, render it. It's amazing that this is happening to Billy Donovan.
Can't play Kanter.
But apparently you can if you're not going to attack him in ways that are going to work.
You can if the ball handlers on your team, other than Paul George, can't shoot even 15-foot jumpers. You can.
Right. So then it doesn't make him pay for dropping back, and then all of a sudden you just have to say to him, go be huge 2 feet away from the rim, and, we'll take our chances. So if they can't, if Oklahoma City can't attack that matchup in a way that makes Kanter problematic to keep on the floor, forcing more Leonard minutes, forcing more Zach Collins minutes that they can then feast on, then that's a.
I like spicy Zach Collins. I like Zach Collins not afraid to mix it up.
Well, I mean, there's a feeling of you saw it in the last game of the season when it's like the 6 guys go out there and they're like the dirty half dozen that win the game when it screws up the matchups for everybody in the last game.
Yeah, they
win
the game Portland didn't want to win.
Exactly. But Zach Collins is on the bench roaring, and when he gets into the games, he's telling everybody to with various spicy languages that I can't use here.
Yes, you can.
Oh, if I remembered the specific ones, maybe I would.
Just more work for the beepers.
No, fair enough. Well, I try to limit the work that I make other people do. But yeah, I mean, there's an attitude there. I think you're seeing that too. If they went out and they got washed in their first 2 games or in one of the first 2 games in Portland, maybe some of that togetherness and cohesion that you're talking about the Blazers having, the sense that this isn't going to be like last year. Maybe those ghosts come back. Maybe those bad feelings kind of come back around. They've done everything they can do to move past that. And, it's going to be on the Thunder. The Thunder are going to have to actively make them start shaking in their boots a little bit, because right now they look confident.
Well, obviously, someone other than the 3 best guys is going to have to show up. You're going to have to get a random 18-point Jeremy Grant game. Mm-hmm. Markieff Morris is going to have to not be a comatose on the floor. Someone is going to, and you saw in game 2, they went with Paul George at power forward for a little bit because they just said, screw it, these guys are not doing anything. We'll just put all our little guys on the floor and see if we can at least that might work, which I thought was smart. One thing I would like to see, and it's interesting to me that we haven't seen it yet. We've seen it, but for 3 possessions at a time, and then it goes away for a while. I think Paul George is going to have to guard C.J. McCollum or Damian Lillard if they're going to win this series, and he's going to have to do it for an extended period of time. Like I said, it's happened, but it's because he's just going to have to go into I'm taking one of these guys out mode, and maybe he's not physically capable of doing it, but he's going to have to do it. And one of the reasons I like that for the Thunder is if you get a stop and one of those guys is stuck on Paul George on the other end of the floor, you now have an offense that badly needs a way to just manufacture something, has a way to manufacture something by just posting him up. I just think he's going to have to become the 2-way destroyer that was the Paul George who was 3rd in MVP is not guarding Mo Harkless in game 3 of this series. He's coming out and he's guarding CJ right away and shutting him down.
Yeah, there's just no other way for it to work because if you're relying on Raymond Felton or you're relying on Dennis Schroeder to get those stops against smaller guys, if you're relying, it's going to be tough sledding.
Portland fans hating Raymond Felton is just tremendous. I hope Raymond Felton moves to Portland after his career is over, just like that he secretly loves the city and shows up at Powell's bookstore and just gets booed out of the bookstore. I hope it never. Who are some other good the Cavaliers fans and Wizards fans both hate Kelly Olynyk forever.
Well,
and
yeah.
even Wizards fans, remember Oubre and Olynyk had that little collision?
Course, yeah.
They'll never forgive him for that. Are there other ones they're like random dudes who are just hated in a place for some reason? I like that.
Well, I like it when it sort of switches from hatred to like grudging respect, or like we've hated you for so long that when we see you, we'll boo you with some love, like Mariano Rivera when he comes to Boston. Or it's like they booing him out of respect or booing him out of like a fondness. Like we've hated you for our entire lives, so a tip of the cap to you.
Well, that I haven't watched professional wrestling in like 20 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, because it's 20. It's really 20. And I actually didn't. There was only a brief time where I started to watch it again as an adult. And a guy who became a star during that time, who I really, really loved, was Kurt Angle. Yeah, I loved Kurt Angle. Completely just adored everything about him. And so I saw at WrestleMania he was going to have his apparently a lot of stuff has happened to Kurt Angle that I don't really know about. I don't really know what it is.
It's been a tough road.
It's been a tough time. So he's going to retire at WrestleMania. So I YouTube Kurt Angle WrestleMania entrance because I want to hear the entrance. And they turned the "you suck" thing into it's like it came from like they actually thought he sucked 20 years ago to now it's just a form of love. It just became a form of adoration for him, and he's egging them on, when his entrance music has the two beats that "you suck." Right. I think that's nice when that happens.
I don't think that's coming for Kelly Olynyk.
It's not coming for Kelly Olynyk. That's it on Oklahoma City. A split's not going to be good enough. You got to come back home and you got to win both. A split and you're losing. Whether it's 5, 6, or 7, you're losing the series.
And what you need is the best version of Russell Westbrook you've seen all season for that to happen.
People, it's time for some straight talk. Picture this. Your favorite basketball team is playing their biggest rival. It's the playoffs, so that means it only could be one of 16 teams. Sorry, Knicks fans. You're streaming the game on your smartphone because you're a millennial. 10 seconds left on the clock. Your best player fakes right, dribbles left, goes up to shoot a buzzer beater, and, oh gosh, your data runs out. Do not let that happen to you. That is a straight-up crisis in modern times. You got to get Straight Talk Wireless. They've added even more data to their popular plan. Now, get 25 gigs of high-speed 4G LTE data, and the new price is still only $45 a month. Let's hear that again. More data than ever before and still only $45 a month. More for the same price seems good. Plus, unlimited talk and text, and that's all on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. With more high-speed data, you'll see more dunks, more no-look passes, and yes, more buzzer beater wins before your data cuts out. Come on, join Team Straight Talk Wireless and get unlimited talk and text plus 25 gigs of high-speed data for just $45 a month. Straight Talk Wireless, everything for less, only at Walmart. First 25 gigs at high speed, then 2G. See terms at straighttalk.com. Let's go on to the next series that's not happening tonight. Utah is now 1-6 in playoff games against Houston. They have lost games 1 and 2 by 52 points combined.
Outside of that, they're killing it.
And yet, I read that this is all just a case of the Jazz missing shots. If the Jazz had made their normal allotment of shots, this would be a different series. Now, the Jazz, I believe, are 15 of 65 from 3 in 2 games, which is not good. We have this little tracking stuff that measures what you would expect a team to shoot based on where the shots are coming from, how open they are, and all this. The Jazz are shooting 12.3 percentage points worse than expected in effective field goal percentage based on that figure, which is by far the worst in the league in the playoffs.
It's a huge number.
And would have been by far the worst in the regular season. So I suppose there is some merit to that. However, you lost the first 2 games by 52 points combined, and if you went, let's say you made 10 more threes, you've only chipped 30 points out of it.
Right.
Now, you might say if we made 10 more threes, then there's no, Houston loses out on some scramble transition points. But if you look at the numbers, Houston, after Utah baskets, is scoring 1.23 points per possession, which is second most among playoff teams behind only Milwaukee, who's not really playing a real playoff team. and would have been first in the regular season by a lot. So Houston is destroying them, destroying Utah's defense, destroying Rudy Gobert, destroying the whole team, destroying Quinn Snyder's facial expressions and hair, no matter how you slice it. And those numbers are interesting to me because I wonder how they're classified. For instance, this is not a new thing for Utah. Utah underperformed its expected tracking percentage, shot quality thing all season. You know who was one of the very, very worst by that metric in the whole league? Guess a Jazz player. Who would you guess it to be?
Donovan Mitchell?
Nope. Who has a really good diet of open catch and shoot threes?
Jay Crowder?
Jay Crowder. All year was like 5-6 worst guys. Maybe their shooters just aren't that good. Like maybe they have guys who just they're just other than Joe Ingles, they're just not that good of a shooting team. Mm-hmm. Maybe Houston is choosing its shooters well. There was a play in the second quarter where Donovan Mitchell blew by James Harden, kicked the ball to Ricky Rubio in the corner, didn't want anything to do with that, flipped it to Royce O'Neal. I think it was Royce O'Neal who drove it after a great rotation by Chris Paul, who looks like fresh as a daisy. Mm-hmm. And drove it. Royce O'Neal drives it and kicks it to Crowder. Good challenge by PJ Tucker. And it's not a corner three, it's an above the break three. Jay Crowder the last couple years is like 33% and 30% on above the break threes. PJ Tucker runs out at him pretty hard. I'll bet you that's classified as like a pretty open shot. You watch the video, that's not an easy shot.
Right.
Houston is playing really well. And Utah is not playing very well. That's what's happening in this series.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that noise in closest defender stuff, right? Like, you know, what measures a contest? How do you qualify the distance? The Jazz, the effective field goal percentage on shots where they're wide open is 36.5% in the series, which is pretty rough, according to NBA.com. And they're getting almost 30% of their shots on those kind of possessions. But as you said, that doesn't necessarily factor for who the shooter is, who's closing out, how effectively they're closing out, those sorts of things. So, and it certainly doesn't help Utah's cause that they basically can't play their best shooter in the series, because if Kyle Korver takes the floor against James Harden or Chris Paul, bad things are going to happen to, I guess maybe, I don't know how much worse it could be, but bad things would happen to Utah's defense.
Well, Kyle's not healthy either. He only played 2 minutes last night. Mm-hmm. He has played 0 minutes with James Harden on the floor.
Yeah,
so
Utah can't do it.
Yeah, Utah has clearly made a decision like we just can't have him on the floor.
Can't play Korver.
Can't play Korver.
But so yeah, I mean, you factor in that the just general lack of shot creation outside of Mitchell on the team. You know, guys that can pump and go and create their own stuff against the set defense. The fact that the Jazz don't really play at all in transition or hardly do.
They're trying. It's just not, they're just slow. It's not in their DNA. You got Joe Ingles and Rudy Gobert on the floor. You ain't going to be that fast.
Yeah. And it's hard to do when you're taking the ball out of the basket every other possession, because Houston's getting whatever it wants. And part of that is that you've given them a lot of, in order to take away exactly what they want, you've given James Harden a right-hand drive to the basket on almost every possession. Which is I mean, there's some shading and nuance to that being the way that
he might be able to dribble with his head. They're just playing out. He could be like a seal and just dribble it. I say he's got so much freedom. They're just rolling out the red carpet for him.
Yeah, and I mean it's one thing to say, well, it worked when the Bucks did it, and another to say, well, there were other reasons why it worked when the Bucks did it. And if you have Giannis who can sort of zone up and guard two guys at the same time, away from the play, that helps. If you have maybe one of the other best rim protectors in the league, that helps. If you have better length and better defensive players across the board, that helps. And you're forcing the right kind of passes, that helps, all these sorts of things. It certainly has not been useful for Utah through 2 games. And I don't know. I mean, they're not going to be a team that switches everything. I just don't think they have the guys for that. It's not stylistically what they want to do. Especially playing with Gobert in the middle there. So it's hard to see defensive answers for them. That will really address what Houston can do on any given possession, especially if you've got a really good Chris Paul. It goes back to that sort of nuclear, the recipe that they had last year, which is an all-world creator in isolation and pick and roll all the time, and for 20 odd minutes or whatever, 2 of them, you're just toast if you can't screen that stuff and keep it outside, and that's what you're seeing with Utah. And if you're not going to be able to score with them on every possession, it's going to be lights out pretty quick.
Yeah, in fairness to the Jazz fans pointing out the shooting, I will say they did miss a lot of open shots early in the game when it got out of control, and you just wonder, 1 or 2 of those falls doesn't change the math all that much, but maybe it changes the game a little bit if you're within 10 instead of within 19 or something. Harden is just destroying them. There's just no way around it. And that's why, it's not really fair to say this about the Jazz, because this could just be one team that's a terrible matchup for them. And it's 2 of their 3 playoff series in the post-Gordon Hayward world have come against this team, and they won the other one. But I do think there is is this a regular season team in terms of how they're constructed, how adaptable they are, particularly on defense? How effective can they score against an elite defense? And Houston's not an elite defense, but a defense that can switch a lot and take away some of their pet stuff. And we saw this last year. Utah relies on sort of the collective power of screen cut. All of a sudden, there's a big advantage open. Well, those advantages don't open if you switch. And Houston's not even switching nearly as much this year. They're playing a lot more traditional defense and daring Derek Favors and Tabo Cephalosha and Ricky Rubio to beat them with threes, and they can't do it. And daring Crowder to beat them with threes, and he can't do it. Royce O'Neal's hit some threes. Ingles, and they'll switch. They'll willingly switch Capella onto Ingles and say, you can't beat him. Go ahead. Because Harden is guarding Ingles, and they will switch with Harden because Harden doesn't want to play super intense rotating defense, and he's a good post defender. And Ingles just can't do anything with Capella 30 feet from the, can't do it. And so I want to see what they have left in the bag, and I want to see how they look at home, because this is starting to look like a team that you at least have to, if you're Dennis Lindsey, you at least have to start asking questions. Are we just not as well suited for the playoffs as I thought?
Yeah, it's something that a couple of my colleagues and guys that you know pretty well, Danny Chow and John Sharks, have written about over the course of the last couple of years too. Like this idea that is this, as successful as it's been, is the roster construction just does it just leave you with no outs against the teams that you have to beat? They might be good enough to beat 27 other teams in the league, but if in a conference that's dominated by Golden State and Houston, stylistically, you need other pitches to go to. You need, a different way to be able to play, and there's not enough playmaking juice. There's not enough versatility defensively. There's not enough. You can say maybe Quinn Snyder, throws everything out the window and says we're going small. I don't know. Is it? It's like Tabo Cephalosha as a 5, what are the answers on the roster that make that work to get more perimeter guys out there? Their best stuff all season long has still relied more heavily on guys like Crowder and Royce O'Neal. Ingles has to be fantastic for them to be able to, score enough to be able to to hold up against really good defenses and really good offenses. And Houston, I know some of the end of the season gets to be kind of fake, with who's playing and who's not playing and whatever. But Houston was, I think, the second in points allowed per possession since the All-Star break or something like that.
They're playing better
when they got healthy and they got sort of that roster churn to be able to get the Daniel House and Iman Shumpert and whoever, those guys into the rotation.
Daniel House is playing really well.
Yeah,
he's playing he's confident. He pumps and drives confidently. He shoots when he should. He plays hard on defense. He defends. He defends back up four. He functions as the power forward when PJ Tucker sits. He's playing well. Austin Rivers is playing well. Eric Gordon. They look, they look really good. There's no question they look really good.
What do you think about that sort of the burgeoning argument or take or whatever that this, as disastrous as it seemed for Houston to fall to 4, that if you're going to catch the Warriors, maybe better to catch them in round 2 when they just lose Boogie, they just lose DeMarcus Cousins, and you still got a healthy Chris Paul who looks fresh and sort of devastating at this point. Is it an argument to say, like, if you're going to have to do it while you're as close to full strength as possible too?
I think I default to George Costanza and say it's not a lie if you believe it. all that meant, you got to face him at some point. Mm-hmm. To get where you want to go. So if you think that's the second round, tell yourself it's the second round. Mm-hmm. If you think it's the conference finals because that's where your seed fell, convince yourself it's the conference finals. I don't really know that it matters. I would always default to later because A, it's nice to make the conference finals. It's a feather in your cap. B, someone could get hurt. Mm-hmm. Who knows? I mean, I always default to later, but I don't really think it matters. I really don't. You're gonna have to beat them. Chances are pretty good. You're gonna have to beat the current post-DeMarcus healthy version of them. If you got to beat them, just play them. Just doesn't matter.
And I think that what we're seeing, the Utah series is sort of a really good on-ramp for them because right now, the way they're playing, they feel like they can beat absolutely anybody. Like they feel their style, their approach, the level they're at on both ends of the floor, the reduced minutes that Harden is having to play to get ready for this for the next
Still
round.
wants the triple-double, though.
Still wants a triple-double, but you do it in 32 minutes? I'm not going to argue with it.
Yeah, it's okay.
So then it's like, this everything sort of moving in the right direction for them, which you talked to us about that 25 games into the season, it would have seemed very, very unlikely.
Gobert looks – Utah is flustered, and you don't have to be I'm not at these games. You don't have to be at the games to see it. There were a couple sequences last night where you could see the players yapping at each other. One of them, Harden missed a floater, and Gobert jumped to challenge it. And because he had jumped to challenge it, he couldn't get back off the ground to get the rebound. And Harden, I believe, put it back in himself. And you could see Ingles on the wing yelling at Gobert, like, what are you doing? And then you could see Gobert yell back at him and with his hand, make the floater motion to say, well, he shot the floater, and then shrug. And you're like, when you see stuff like that, you're like, Harden has these guys shook up. Harden has them out of there. And Gobert has not been able to find the right balance of challenging the floater without leaving the glass naked or leaving the lob to Capella. He just hasn't been able to. Harden had them shook before the series started, and now he really has them shook.
And you could tell, Ricky Rubio after the game too is saying, I think it's that we don't really believe 100%, and some of that is whether we believe in schemes, some of it is whether we believe in we're fully committed to what we're being asked to do. Maybe it's, I think Steve Clifford had said it, maybe to you, that it's not necessarily always do we need to change the scheme, it's do we need to just do what we're supposed to do better, and they certainly haven't accomplished that through 2 games, and maybe the part of that is they're just not sure they believe that it's going to matter a whole heck of a lot.
Well, they're going to have to go back and find that belief. And I just don't know what you do with Harden. I really don't. They got beat up for this foursome right, play like the Bucks scheme, which they have not been able to execute. I mean, in fairness, they haven't been able to execute it. Houston led the league in the regular season in the percentage of their shots that were corner threes. That percentage is higher through 2 games than it was in the regular season. And against a team that I believe was 3rd or 4th in fewest corner threes. They're built to not allow corner threes. Which is really interesting. I just don't know. So they got beat up for that. And okay, you got to play him straight up. I don't even know what playing James Harden straight up is anymore.
What does it look like now?
Because Utah or Houston, I don't know why I make Houston, the Rockets. I'm going to write about this before Game 3, I think. So I guess guarding him straight up is just facing up, parallel to him and not giving him one side or the other. But I think a lot of people by guard him straight up mean let's play normal pick and roll defense or play something like normal pick and roll defense. When Capella comes to set a screen, trap him, get the ball out of his hands, whatever answers people have for these problems. Right. Houston has just decided we're not going to set picks. We don't have to do that anymore.
Right.
And so I don't even know if playing him straight up matters because the result is just going to be he beat you off the dribble and the same situation arises. I don't even know what you're supposed to do anymore.
Yeah, short of Royce O'Neal trying to put him in a sleeper hold or something like that. I'm not sure what saying we're gonna do one-on-one defense against him is gonna do. And even if they did set picks for him, okay, how comfortable do you feel with him drawing Rudy Gobert 29 feet away from the basket and then, dancing for 5 seconds?
If they set picks, it's a win. If they set picks, just trap him and force Capella to make plays and take your chances. If they set picks, that's a win. That's how great an isolation player he's become. Mm-hmm. I don't even know. I'm interested to see, Ed, do you have any ideas for them? I mean, I think they're going to have to look hard at not starting Favors, which is an obvious one. Their best lineup, their closing lineup, which is Crowder in Favors' place, has only played 11 minutes in 2 games. That's not enough. Obviously, there's been garbage time.
All of their best stuff. And I mean, I love Derek Favors. I was on board for them re-signing him because of the sort of blanket he gives you as a backup center and as a starting four with, sort of lets you toggle between identities. But it's got to be, you need to go down swinging, and their best lineup pretty much all season long has had Gobert at the 5 with the sort of no point guard kind of lineups where it's Mitchell and Ingles handling the ball, and then O'Neal and Crowder kind of as together.
So you did ditch Rubio, put O'Neal in Rubio's place.
And it's tough because he had 17 points last game, and he's also sort of a culture setting guy with the ball, the way the ball can pop and move. But
O'Neal's their best defender on Harden.
Their best defender,
not that it matters,
but he's their best shot to do it without junking things up too much, and a more reliable shooter than he's become a more reliable shooter than Rubio.
Shot 40% from three this year.
It puts your most sort of your best chances of switching things if you want to sort of try to toggle that switch. It puts your best more reliable shooters on the floor, a little bit more juice, a little bit more size. I think that's maybe your best option, and it's still not. It still doesn't feel like a great one, but that to me, I would want to see more of O'Neal, and I'd like to see those sort of smaller lineups.
I get it. I just think in an offense that relies on a lot of continuity and a lot of next level quick thinking, that Rubio does some stuff that is hard to see, doesn't show up in numbers necessarily, traditional numbers anyway, but that kind of makes them get through some small spaces better than they would otherwise. But I think that's completely worth a shot. The only other thing I would like them to do is they just can't let Harden off the hook on defense. There are possessions where Harden is on Mitchell and Mitchell just stands on the wing and doesn't get the ball. They're willing to switch Harden anywhere, which means you can get him on Donovan Mitchell anytime you want. And just go at him. Let him see if he can survive that, or at the very least make him work on those possessions. But I don't really have anything else. Houston came out with a great game plan on both ends of the floor. And by the way, if you know the Jazz, you can tell Houston did a good job scouting a lot of their pet actions and a lot of the pet actions that set up the pet actions. They were prepared, they were ready, they knew it was coming, and they've done a nice job. On to Utah. And by the way, what you said before about this is a great on-ramp for them, I thought was a great point. Because not only they're confident, but they respect Utah. Houston respects you. I know that. I've talked to people there. It's not like, I know they're kind of clowning them on the floor. But against Minnesota last year, they just sort of walked into the playoffs and screwed around for a little bit. They're not screwing around right now. They're like, they respect Utah enough. Like, okay, we're going to play. Let's go to one more series. Dan Devine, you work for Bill Simmons. Okay. You must defend why you are still worried about the Boston Celtics after a 2-0 start over Indiana, an unbelievable Kyrie game last night. I hope that Bill's all right with this. The stance that you've taken here of Boston skepticism.
Well, yeah, I did it. I wrote that this morning, just basically to throw everybody off the scent, so that they're not. Everybody knows that I get my marching orders from on high to do nothing but praise the Celtics. Yeah, they're so fascinating to me. They have been all season. They remain that way now because they're sort of an eye of the beholder team. They're up 2-0 in their series. They've done their job. They've defended home court. They are halfway to the conference finals. They have got an elite Kyrie game, as you said. He's been waiting to get to the playoffs and has told everybody that would listen about it. He's so sick of the regular season and he wanted to get here. That's why. That's what he can do, and that's as sort of sensational as he can be. There's that sort of old adage that maybe sometimes you might be one injury away from being a pretty good team. I don't think they're better without Marcus Smart, but I think it maybe allows for a greater minute allotment to some guys who thrive better in bigger roles. Jaylen Brown, defended really hard last night. I think 8, 9, or 10 rebounds. Made a heck of a pass at the end of the game. The drive and push to Tatum for the corner three. Tatum with more, had one of his best games in quite a while last night with larger minutes and a larger workload. Rozier looks good, and Hayward has looked really good for the last 15, 20 games of the season or so. It's kind of everything seems like it's pointing in the right direction, and still it takes It's work, and it takes a titanic meltdown in the final 51 seconds by a bad Pacers team to win the game.
That was some are they tanking somehow? That was an incredible sequence of events in the last 30 seconds of the game.
Wesley Matthews being like, I got it. Guys, step away. I got this one. And to Boston's credit, that happens because, Wesley Matthews winds up taking an off balance 28 footer or whatever to try to win the game because Boston's doing really good work underneath and Horford is mucking things up on the help side and there aren't easy plays for them to make. And also because the guy that unlocks everything for them in those clutch situations isn't there. all I'm saying is, so you can look at the fact that they're up 2-0 and that they've beaten up, they've been great defensively and they've beaten up on the Pacers the way they're supposed to. You can look at that and say, this is a team whose formula is coming together at the right time. Or you can look at it and say, you've scored 96.3 points per 100 possessions.
The numbers are, like, I knew this was a low-scoring series. Boston, the team that's winning, has 96 points per 100 possessions. The worst offense in the league, your beloved New York Knicks, I believe, was like 103.
Why are you bringing up old stuff?
103, despite Point Hazonia at the end of the season.
that spiked the numbers at the end of the season.
Indiana's at 87 points per 100 possessions. And that's the zoom even further out. And it's 2-0 Boston. Clutch play by Kyrie. Everybody looks good. Everybody looks happy. The defense has been unbelievable. They're facing a team that without Oladipo is just challenged to create offense against them. We could talk a little bit about why and who needs to show up, but we'll get there. And B, the Baines-Horford thing, I'm still not convinced they're going to be able to carry that as an every game starting group. Now, and they've never said that they would, but that they're minus 10 with those two on the floor in this series, 77 points per 100 possessions. And you can just see, they don't have enough shooting. Al Horford sets a screen, they trap knowing that Baines is back on the dunker spot somewhere and everybody can rotate very short distances and it's fine. Offensively, that is against a very good defensive team. That's not working.
Right.
It's not a cause for concern because they're up 2-0 and they're going to beat Indiana. They're a better team than Indiana. But, you got to look at it for the next team.
Yeah.
And the next team's probably going to be Milwaukee.
The next team's pretty damn good, especially and then on the defensive end too. And so some of those things where it's like you can hunt some matchups, or you don't have to worry so much about when they go small with whatever it was last night. It was a lot of Bojan at the 4, but then also they were playing 3 guard lineups with Aaron Holiday and stuff. There's not as much. Nothing that's really going to strike fear into your heart if you're Boston's defense in those sorts of lineups. Milwaukee's got stuff that can scare you in all those sorts of situations.
Giannis scares me. When Giannis does those rude dunks where he's just under the rim and jumps straight up and dunks on a larger person, or maybe not larger because he's very large. It's just mean. It's just really like I watch and I'm like, there's no need for that. That's just meanness.
That's uncalled for, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you're going to try to turn Thon Maker into Chris Dudley or something like
Thon
that, right?
Maker or Thon McCurr is just out there trying to make a living. Just trying not to get embarrassed on television. Just, you're under the rim. How are you going to do that to people? It's very rude.
It's frankly rude. And we know that he likes to do that to Aaron Baines. We've seen that in those matchups last couple of seasons.
Aaron Baines doesn't care.
Oh yeah, he's good with it.
He doesn't care. Jared Allen really doesn't care. The Jared Allen-Giannis at the rim rivalry is one of the great, only diehard NBA fans know this is even a thing. Right. And Jared Allen has no fear. And he'll try to block a shot. He'll go at Giannis on the other end. That's a fun little one.
And as we learned the other night, he's also got a hell of a chin.
Yeah, he took that hard. That one
on the button, dude.
I'd be out for a little bit. Right. I'd be out for a little bit with that.
I'm not dusting it off and going to shoot the free throws after that one.
He was laughing. He was laughing it off.
Good for him.
Maybe that's why they were upset. The Sixers. Maybe that's why
he didn't take it hard enough. He didn't sell it.
Didn't seem like he was in pain. Didn't hurt him.
Well, we'll see. We'll see how that manifests now. But yeah, I think one of the things that I sort of wrote as a framing device in the story was like that you win matters much more than how you win in the playoffs, because you got to get to 16 and getting 2 down early is important, whether they're stylistic or not. But as you said, this is the Celtics were not built to be a team that scraped through the first round series and then wound up on the behind the 8 ball in round 2. They're a team that needs to have answers for a lot of different kinds of questions to be able to go as far as they want to go. And maybe it is as simple as Kyrie does everything that we need on offense, and he's going to play 40 minutes or whatever when it matters. Horford does everything we need everywhere else, and he's going to play 40 minutes when it matters. It makes me a little bit nervous to keep relying on that as his age goes up and his odometer ticks up, and was a little bit under the weather, didn't look 100% last night. I think only took 6 shots, but was everywhere when they needed him to be.
I will say this: I'm aware that I'm now dipping into low post podcast cliche territory. Al Horford's screening last night was like, he was just destroying people with picks, flipping the direction of his pick. What he got really good at, and you could see it late in the game, is Kyrie'd be bringing the ball up and he would suddenly, he'd be ahead of him and then he would stop. He would like stop or slow down and just hit everybody around Kyrie who didn't expect him to stop. It's just people laugh at that stuff. People laugh at the fact that basketball nerds talk about it. Ask the Celtics guards if it matters that Al Horford's a great screener.
Yeah, and the below the foul line stuff where, Kyrie starts making his way in and Horford just backs his way in and clears out the road.
Yeah.
Like the Gortat, Steven Adams kind of stuff that they do. And like it opens a path. It gets him all the way to the basket and when he might not otherwise do it. The degree to which Horford's presence and his, ratcheted up effectiveness in the fourth quarter changed that game a lot. Really, it was perhaps just as important as Kyrie hitting everything he needs to hit. But so maybe it is as simple as that formula is the way it works. You got Kyrie and Tatum handling the scoring. Everybody else just works their asses off on defense. And then, you let the chips fall where they may in the final 5 minutes because our guy can unlock your defense better than your guy can unlock ours. But it just feels a little shaky. You'd prefer to see a little, sort of keep the hammer down, put, the foot on the throat, as opposed to, we need superhero Kyrie to beat Noah Oladipo, Indiana. So I'm not saying that I think the Celtics are clown frauds that are never going to win anything of note, but I think I think
you are. I think that's actually what you mean.
That was edited out. That line was taken out of the story. But I think you can look. Whereas you can look at it and feel confident about what you've seen, you can also look at it and say, it feels a little bit too shaky for me. So, but which is frankly in keeping with the way they've been all season long. They've been the hardest team in the league to get a beat on all year, and I think why should that stop now?
It is funny because last night, for the bulk of that game, I had no doubt that they were going to win. Because I said this on the preview podcast I did with Coach Thorpe, I just have no faith that Indiana can score enough points to win any more than one or two games in this series. I just don't have faith in their offense.
Yeah, it was pleasantly surprising that they did for stretches.
And then they came. It reached a point, and the Magic did this in Game 1 in Toronto. It reached a point where it felt like the classic home team has come back to wrest control of this game. Boston's up 4 or whatever, and then Bogdanovich hits a couple huge shots, a 3 right in Al Horford's face, and Indiana's back ahead. You're like, man, that's a ballsy team.
Yeah, with the Harden sidestep too. The surest sign that move has gone, league wide and global is Bojan pulling it out on Al Horford with 2 minutes left in a playoff game.
And they came back and they made Boston re-earn the game. Also, in my notes as I was watching this game, I kept writing, when is Boston going to go small? And without Morris at the 4, and they finally closed. And it's so much time has passed that they put in that lineup, and it took me like 2 or 3 minutes to register. Oh wait, that was supposed to be their starting lineup.
Yeah, with Hayward.
This was not supposed to be like the small ball alternative to. This was like the lineup that we spent all summer imagining how good it could be and what the possibilities were. Maybe that's kind of back. We'll see what happens when and if Marcus Smart comes back and if he's back at all. But that was good. And their defense against a team that can't space the floor, that does not have an elite playmaker anywhere. I mean, Tyreek Evans is probably the best playmaker they have left. And particularly when you put Tatum on Darren Collison, I think has been a sneaky, smart decision that I didn't see coming, because I thought, are they really going to want to put Kyrie on Wes Matthews and sort of expose him to the physicality of Wes Matthews post game, which they haven't gone to at all and probably won't matter. But Darren Collison's a little guy and not a great passer, and Jason Tatum's a bigger guy. And you can see the Celtics just don't respect Collison's ability to make a cross-court pass. They'll leave Miles Turner open in the corner or whatever because they just don't think he can make that pass. But speaking of Miles Turner, the playoffs have started, Miles Turner. 13 points in 2 games ain't getting it done. And
I think 13 shots in 2 games.
5 of 13. You are exactly right, Mr. Devine. I don't know what the point of Miles Turner is on offense sometimes. And by that I mean, you're supposed to be the spacing guy among Indiana's 3 big men. So when Thaddeus Young is in the pick and roll and you're on the baseline 15 feet from the rim, I don't know what purpose you're serving, because you're not spacing the floor. You're just letting Aaron Baines hang in there. And I get that against a lot of teams, the Pacers have the interior passing between Young and Sabonis and Young and Turner, whoever 2 of them are in, to squeeze it through those short little spaces. The Celtics are not a normal team with Al Horford and Aaron Baines. They're going to shut all that down with you just are not going to be able to. So I don't know, like, what purpose Miles Turner is serving. I've said all year I don't know what purpose he's serving by picking and popping to 18 feet, which he did last night. You cannot do that. So if you're the spacer guy and Sabonis is going to be the role guy or Thad Young is going to be the role guy, then space. Get out of there and space. I don't know if that's his fault or Nate McMillan's fault, but that's not going to work. And, you know, sometimes he looks like he has a post game and the numbers suggest that his post game is okay to pretty good. But boy, the Celtics just don't care. They'll switch whoever onto him. They just don't care. And the Pacers don't even try. They're not even, the only guy they've tried to post up is Thaddeus Young. And if they get Marcus Morris on Sabonis, dump it into Sabonis, by all means do that more. But Turner, they're not like, he just has done nothing on offense in this series.
Yeah, and it's a shame because he has, you know, can hit those shots. And when he gets out there, it's like, you know, it's not, obviously not at the level of someone like Marc Gasol where the ball comes out there and it's like you're saying, just shoot it. You're really good at that. Just shoot it. Which he finally did the other night in game 2 against Orlando. But, if it's like having that skill and not maximizing it, it just makes everything harder for an offense it's already hard enough for them. And like sometimes you see like Sabonis pops and Turner rolls and I'm like, don't do that. that shouldn't be happening. They're a team that needs to get sort of wring every ounce of offensive juice it can and efficiency it can out of the complicated and limited players it's got left. Can't afford to leave stuff on the table. And yeah, Turner would need to, you know, he's not going to be a dominant big man who's going to score 35, but you need something more from him.
And look, defensively, he obliterated some shots at the rim,
great.
Ate up some people, but you got to show up on offense. And that was my long way of saying Boston's defense looks like it did last year.
Yeah.
It looks crazy good. They even had the scram switch going on a couple that they did against Philly most famously last year, where Rozier was caught in the post against Thaddeus Young, and mid-air on the entry pass, they came and rescued him on a switch. Mm-hmm. They looked engaged, and you have to say, to your point, this is a team that's not built to exploit anybody's defense. So we'll see. We got 3 games tonight: Brooklyn, Philly, the Nuggets, and the Spurs, and Warriors, Clippers, round 3.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm about to head into Barclays for Game 3. So
I'm interested in how many Philly fans are going to be there. I'm I'm not going to go tonight. I'm going to be at Game 4 on Saturday, because I think it's going to be a lot of Philly fans, like a good minority of Philly fans, which would make for a fun atmosphere. And I'm very interested in what Game 4 will be like if Brooklyn can find a way to win this game tonight.
Yeah.
Because then the pressure is on big time, and all the Phillies owners are going to be at these games in New York. Everyone is going to be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Dan Devine, you can read his stuff at The Ringer. It's always tremendous. Thank you for popping in studio here in New York and talking a little playoff hoops, my friend.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
The Lowe Post is presented by Goodyear. Discover the possibilities. Goodyear, more driven.